Hey everyone, welcome to Nerding IO. I know it's been a little bit. I've actually been working on a boilerplate and AI starter kit, which I'll be releasing soon. But today, what we're going to talk about is some of the advancements that Google Chrome has been coming out with. So, there's been the Web AI Summit, there's been advancements in Web NN, and then there's also been different Google Chrome APIs that allow you to access Gemini directly in the browser. So we're going to go through all of that today. And with that, let's get started. All right, so a lot of what we're going to talk about has actually been inspired by the Web AI Summit. So this is a summit and conference that Google put together, but it has a lot of different contributors, people like Microsoft, Hugging Face, and different people doing kind of exploratory experiments, but also some really cool things about why we would want to use AI on the client side in our applications. So in upcoming videos, we're going to look at things like WebNN. We're also going to continue hearing about Transformers.js, which we have an entire playlist on if you haven't checked out or subscribed to this channel yet. Definitely should, as well as things like WebLLM. But today what we're going to look at specifically is the state of AI that's actually built into Chrome. And so what's been happening is Google's been releasing a lot of different features that in Chrome you can actually leverage Gemini and other different APIs in the browser. And so the first one is actually a utility. And so it's this ability to use AI for styling. And what you can do is you can actually, in like the developer mode, you can actually pull this up and you can, let me see if I can get this a little bigger for everyone. You can see that there's this AI assistance tab, but there's also the ability to right click inside of the DOM and ask AI questions. So if you click that, it's just going to pull up this AI assistance tab. You want to turn on the setting that allows you to do this, which is pretty simple. And then you can actually converse with this particular element as it's in your application and what's going on with that. So I thought this was really slick for the ability to like develop with an AI, almost like a co-pilot, but a co-pilot in the browser. Again, this is using Gemini as an example. So that's like one tool that out of the box you just have to enable and is great for development. Real quick, everyone, if you haven't already, please remember to like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Also, keep your eyes out for the boilerplate that we'll be releasing in the next 2 weeks. It's an AI starter kit based on Next.js and some of the advancements in GenKit. So with that, let's get back to it. What we're also going to look at is some of the APIs that they've been coming out with. So if we look at this release where it's talking about Gemini Nano for Chrome, there's a few things that we're going to go through. And the first is this get an early preview. So you can actually sign up for access to get an early preview program where you can do like local prototyping. We're not actually going to apply for this, but I'm going to show you how you can actually use some of the APIs that are in Origin trial. So some of the things that are like the benefits for running AI locally is actually security. If we think about the fact that we're sending data over the wire, we have to be secure and sanitize all our information in 2 different locations. This also, on the front end, allows for end-to-end encryption. There are things like, latency, so we can have like a quicker, snappier user experience. And these models can be relatively small, right? Like we're loading them in as an asset, or we're using tools or concepts like WebGPU to make it faster. There's also this concept of being hybrid. So maybe you have client first, but a graceful fallback to server side if the browser doesn't support necessarily what you're trying to do. So when we're actually going through and looking at these exploratory APIs, and you can kind of see we're going to go through each one of these, but I wanted to show like what this actually looks like. So if we were to build an application, the way this would work is you would have your app, and you can actually hit the APIs through an object, like through JavaScript in an object, and pull in the exploratory APIs. Those are going to actually connect to Gemini Nano. They have very specific use cases. And then you can actually even like fine-tune things or have specific tasks that you want to do. It's then going to go through the runtime, and there's multiple different ways that we can kind of load in these models. So the ones that we've looked at in this channel, in the beginning, probably like a year ago, we were using like WebAssembly, and more recently, Transformers.js has been using WebGPU, so you can actually pull things in through WebGPU now, which is a lot faster. But this is basically how the pattern would work: is you would still have your front end experience, you'd be able to call through JavaScript these exploratory APIs, and then be able to hit your AI runtime. So let's kind of take a look at what all this means. So if we click on the status, there's 6 different APIs that they have that are either being discussed or are already able to be used. And so there's this idea of an origin trial, or there's EPP, which is early preview program. And so if you do the origin trial, you can actually, as long as you have a version of, I think it's like 137 to 131 to 137 of Chrome, you can actually run these. And so that's what we're going to do today, is we're actually going to look at some of these, how you would actually set this up. And then in like a future video, we'll actually look at how do you do the same kind of thing, but through a Chrome extension. So the origin trial means that you can actually get started today. The EPP means that you have to sign up, and if you get approved, they'll give you access to these other APIs. So the 3 that we'll look at today are Translator, Language Detector, and Summarizer. And so if you scroll down a little bit, you can kind of see the use cases for these. And the idea being is that you can actually translate in the browser. So you can think about the fact of right now you have to take your translations and have multiple different locales associated with whatever the content is. This would allow you to actually have live information that you could potentially change on the fly, or a forum, or in a chat, for instance. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this. So if we look at the translator, there's a few things that we need to pay attention to. Like I was saying, you need to have Chrome 131, 137, or 137. And then we actually have to set up a couple of different things. So if what we're going to be doing, I actually already set up the origin trial. But the first thing you want to make sure you do is you come over here into Chrome flags, and you want to actually set up the translation API. So I already have this enabled. One thing that it's going to do is anytime you change it, you see you're going to have to relaunch your Chrome browser. So I'm just going to leave that as is and not have to worry about it. You can also look for the other ones. So Writer is in here. You can see Writer API. These ones will go through at a later date because that's with the EPP. There's the language, the prompt API. We'll look at this when we go through the Chrome extension. And then there's the summarization as well as the writer. So I would make sure you have all of these enabled, then go ahead and relaunch your browser. The next thing that you're going to need to do, specifically for the ones that are origin trial, is actually sign up for an origin trial. Before we do this, I just want to show you that you can actually see so right here, this is what we just did to enable that. you can actually see the Translator API. So this is what the translation API is going to look like, where you can actually call to translate. You can actually see can translate. If it returns readily, then that means that you actually have it working. If it says no, then it's not enabled in your browser, essentially. If you need to download, this actually works fairly similar to like Transformer.js, where you can actually see the progress of the model being loaded, and then we can execute our action. So this is the translate. Obviously, there's going to be some limitations, and again, this is all experimental. So there's a handful of languages that they have, and down at the bottom, they actually have an example of how this would work. So if you have the experiments turned on and you want to run this, you can actually test it right here, right? So this is a great way for you to just see it in action, as long as like you have the experiment turned on. But what if you actually want to build something? So we're going to take that same example, we're going to do it locally and see how we can get this set up. So the first thing is you need to set up for an origin trial. Now again, I've already done this, but we'll just kind of show what this looks like. So basically what you're doing is you're just going to register for the API. When it says web origin, what's interesting about this is, as you can see, you can do HTTPS, HTTP, or Chrome extension. Again, we're going to look at the prompt API and a Chrome extension in a later video. You can also do an isolated app. HTTP is only localhost addresses. And so if you wanted to develop this locally, you have to do HTTP localhost, and then you're also going to want to choose your port. So in this case, you could do like 80 or 3000 or whatever. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to say 0 to 10,000. We're actually going to acknowledge that we know that this is, a trial, and it's also saying I need to be signed in. So we'll just do that really quick. So now that I'm signed in, I can actually register this. We're going to go ahead and take this information and figure out how can we actually add this. So what I did is I actually took the translator code and I set up a local version of this. What's interesting about this code, though, is you need multiple things. So you need both the Translator API and the Language Detector API. So you would need to go to the Language Detector API and actually go through the same process of setting up the flag, going through, and then signing up for another origin trial. Each one of these trials, you need to sign up. Each one of these APIs, you need to have a separate origin trial signed up for and agree to the terms. So do that for Translator, Language Detector, and Summarizer API. What's interesting, though, is like once you get this, it's going to give you a token. And so now we're going to actually look at the code. So if we pull up Cursor and we actually look at the Translate API, we can actually see here that what we'll do, the way that we put in our origin trial is we have to have a meta tag that is equivalent to this, and then we put in our content right here as what we're using in order to actually run this locally. What I did is I literally just copied the HTML from the example. Same thing with the script here, which is basically looking at the information from the DOM, so getting our query selectors. And then up at the top, it's actually acknowledging, do we have the translation or not? And the detector, right? So then this detector is detecting the initial language, And then we're actually figuring out our confidence score. And then right here, is our tag to switch the languages, right? So now we're taking human readable, we're looking at our submit, and we are making sure that it's in between those languages, and then we are actually doing the translation right here. And that's it. So basically, in a few lines of code, we're able to translate directly in the web. So let's see what that looks like. So all I'm going to do is launch this in a terminal, and we will just I'll go into translation, and then I have something called serve, so I'm just going to serve on 80 because that's what I set up my original trial on. And we're going to go ahead and look at this running in the browser. So this is actually running on my local host. It is using the origin trial token that I have. It's giving me my confidence score. It's allowing me to translate to different languages on the fly. And you saw how fast that was, right? It's not hitting a back end. It's actually using AI directly from Gemini in Chrome, which is super cool. So we're going to take a look at one more example, which is the summarizer. So this same process, right? You're going to have to go through, enable it, and you're going to have to register the origin trial. Again, you can just click here. Gives you the ability to load and do the summarizer, so you can do local development. This is the flag that you need to turn on, which I'd already done. You want to check if AI is available, right? So we're looking for a self.ai, and we're also looking at summarizer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come down here, and again, that's the download progress. Cool. So this is how we're actually going to summarize it. Loved the fact that it included the option for Markdown, and this is where we're actually creating what that summarization is. So, I'm kind of jumping around, but what it's doing is it's going to take the article and then actually summarize the inner HTML based on the article. So you can think about, rather than processing every single, like pre-processing or post-processing your blog, you can actually generate a summary on the fly of your articles that are being built on the browser. Now, there's some benefit to having the SEO side of things, where the backend or post-processing your article so that all your SEO is optimized. But the interesting thing about this is that not only could you do this on the browser, but through the article, but let's say you wanted to highlight certain sections and summarize those pieces. You could now build in tools or build in Chrome extensions that allow you to do that directly in the browser without ever having to call your backend. And all of these interactions are free because you're accessing the Google Chrome Gemini through the browser. You're not paying anything to access that because the Nano version is included in the browser. So if let's just take all the text on this page, and we'll just do cool. And then it's showing how it supports localhost. It's giving us information here, and talking about some of the key points. So we could obviously make this, much simpler for this to understand. If we just did something like that, and let's have it generate again, and just see if it can get us some key points. Cool. So now we can actually see the Markdown example too, right? This is showing us that it's giving us bullet points and actually giving us the information directly in the browser. You saw how fast that was. Again, not going out to the back end at all. today was some of the things that were released in the Web AI Summit through Google, as well as different APIs that you can actually leverage in Google Chrome so that you can access things like Google Gemini directly in the browser without actually having to load any particular information from the backend. With that, happy nerding.